Hi, I'm Drew.
And I'm Sam.
And welcome to Drewling Samantics. Hello, Sam. Are you there, my good friend?
Hello, mate. How you doing?
Hello.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. I'm very well, thank you, Sam. How's yourself?
Yeah, not too shabby at all. Very excited to be back chatting to you, Drew.
Oh, well, I'm always excited when we get to this episode in particular. Not that every week isn't a joy, but I do like this episode because this is, of course, our best of guests episode.
Yeah.
So I love this one.
It's always a joy to sort of look back over highlights and stuff. And I think, I mean, we always have had incredible guests. We've been very lucky from the word go. But
Yeah.
I'd go as far as saying that maybe season 3 has been our most versatile collection of talented people yet.
I think you might be right. We've gone across the board a fair amount on this, haven't we? We really have. Yeah, we're so lucky. I mean, they're absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, massively lucky. Massive thank you to each and every one of our guests for joining us across the season and bringing us their stories and all the tales of the industry from their particular vocational element, I guess. So
yeah, I think, mind you, before we plunge in, are you locked and loaded? Have you got the necessary with you?
Mate, you know that's always priority number one. Cheers
Good man.
to you, Drew.
Cheers to you, mate.
But I guess that's probably enough chatting for now as well. No one wants to hear us at the moment. We're here to see some of the best moments from all the guests that joined us across season 3. So absolutely. I don't think we need to wait anymore, mate.
No, let's go for it. I can't wait. Are you ready?
Let's do it. Away we go.
Yeah, I've sort of done strange stuff, I guess, but never really consciously. It's just been a case of kind of like following where my interest goes, and then going, "Oh, I did another weird thing. I didn't mean to, but it turned out that way."
You're following a niche because it's just happened, I guess.
Yeah. Nobody really sets out to be like, "I'm going to do stuff that's really going to irritate audiences and kind of polarize." That you've got to make stuff because you're like, "I think this is good." Then you go, "Oh no, I made another polarizing thing."
Okay, so for those people out there who aren't familiar with your career and where you've come from and your background, give us a very quick explanation for everyone about what you do, how you started, and where you've come from.
So I do comedy stuff basically, and I kind of got into it at uni. I did youth theatre through my teens and did bits of kind of like proper acting and serious acting, and tried to write plays in that very sort of teenage tortured way that you do, where you're like, wow, this is really profound and deep, but actually you read one Pinter play and didn't really get it, and were like, I'll do exactly that. So I wrote that kind of thing. And I think I had it in my head that like I wanted to perform and I wanted to write, but I wasn't quite sure in what way. And I liked theatre and I liked film and I wasn't sure where I'd go. And then at uni, I met a bunch of comedians and I was writing some comedy scripts for the student radio station, just like bashing them out week by week. They weren't amazing, but it was kind of giving myself a deadline, like every week to go try and write a new script every week. And these stand-ups who ran the Student Comedy Society said, come on down, try a gig, give it a go. And it just sort of clicked into place, really, because I think I knew I loved performing, I knew I loved writing, but I knew I didn't quite have like the discipline maybe to follow the grooves of those careers. Like there's such like, well, it feels like there's such pathways in those careers, and I wasn't quite that good at following them. Whereas in comedy, it's so much more like you come up with the thing you want to do, you do it on stage, you're kind of in control of what you do. And been doing that for about 10 years now. So now it's kind of fed off into different things. Like for a long time, I just did stand-up, and then I did bits of character comedy, and now I do bits of writing and bits of acting, usually always skewing towards like weird comedy stuff. Every now and again, I go back to where I was when I was a teenager and do the odd like actual play or actual bit of acting or writing. But generally, I kind of write and make stupid stuff. And that's what I do today.
I think probably, like you said, on the back of things like RuPaul's Drag Race, because it's so entertaining and drag is entertaining.
Yeah.
I think on the back of that, it's made it slightly more mainstream. Ruby's and our style of drag is very much old school drag, which is, you know, comedy with live vocals and performances. Drag in itself it's got such a sliding scale. It's likening drag is trying to categorize dance. There are so many different styles of dance, and you say you're a dancer, you know, that's a full gamut of things. Whereas I think drag has become popular because of the RuPaul style of drag. You got your girls that just want to look pretty and your photographic drag. You got your drags who do the lip sync, and I think lip sync, when it's done really well, is a form of dance. It's not, you know, that in itself, just because it's drag and it's called lip sync, it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of rehearsal. It takes a lot of practice to get good at it. And the costumes are amazing. You know, it's not just a case of somebody just strutting around the dance floor when it's at its very, very best. And then I think you've got your comedy drag queens, which is more old school, which I used to work with in the working men's clubs years ago. And they always used to sing, and we're very much of the old school persuasion. So we do get some people coming to see our shows thinking they're going to see RuPaul's Drag Race, and they're very much surprised when it's belly laughs all the way. And, you know, not. I think at Ruby's as well, drag has got a bit of a reputation of being bitchy. You know, they're very bitchy. At Ruby's, we're drag queens, so we're a bit cruel, but we laugh with people rather than at people. But that didn't answer your question. Your question about why it's so popular it's because of RuPaul, basically.
Yeah, so I've had on the back burner an idea for a musical on the Underground during the Blitz. I've seen quite a few of those old black and white photos of people sheltering on the tube during the Blitz in East London, and it seemed like a sort of just this inspiration for a musical, really. But and also although it sort of generally is quite a tough time for people, they were also very resilient, and there's photographs of people having entertainment and putting on concerts down on the tube platforms at night. So again, it seemed like a sort of perfect blank canvas for a musical. I also saw some photographs of an old tube train from the 1920s, travelling from Euston out to Buckinghamshire. And unbelievably or not, there is a restaurant car on this tube train. Now, the idea that we'd go down on the tube these days and have a slap up 3-course meal is perhaps unthinkable. But again, it felt like another sort of, that could make a really good dramatic piece on stage. Well, I never really got much further with that particular idea, and it feels a little bit like a scene from the Polar Express, where there's a sort of dance song going on in a railway carriage. So I was sort of looking for a story to implant in that sort of time period, really. And the more I looked into it, the more I read. It was then I stumbled upon a book that had recently come out about the tragedy at Bethnal Green in 1943. And the story there was that 173 people lost their lives in a crush walking down to the tube during the Blitz. And that was what I decided to focus the musical on. But I was also very determined that, first of all, we would sort of stick to the facts as far as possible and respect the victims, some of whom are still alive, but also make sure it was an entertainment, because at face value, that doesn't sound like particularly exciting or energetic material for a musical. And I think we've tried to, sort of combine that sadness with a lot of laughter and energy to make a really sort of cohesive story. Not that these things ever happen in a straight line. Obviously, there were tangents and piles of deleted material and songs that even quite late in the day got abandoned. But overall, once we started writing properly 2 summers ago, so we're now it was 2 years between starting the writing process and doing the workshop, which is actually pretty quick. If you look at West Side Story, it took 10 years to write. So we've all got other jobs to do as well, of course. So that's really the sort of background as to how it came about, and I'm very lucky to have worked with Emma and Nick on this as well, because these things you can't do them on your own, in my view.
Well, and Sam.
Yeah, I was just going to say how actually it was the one upside of COVID that we all had a bit more time on our hands, and it was actually a really nice thing to be focusing on during what was a pretty difficult time. So it was nice for us to have that to do during lockdown. So it'll hold memories for a long time for many different reasons.
But I think what I'm finding as I'm directing is that, let's say we put a call out for scratch night, we have actors go, I've never done this before. This is completely new. What do I do? Like, how do you want it? And it's I don't know whether it's the culture scene at the moment in the UK, which at the moment needs so much. What's the word I'm looking for? Not solidarity, but just consistency in what it's going to do. Like just grounding. That's what I mean. That it needs something that this is going to be a success. That this is going to be a success because obviously we've got funding, blah blah blah, politics, whatever. But to actually take a risk, to go, I don't know what's going to happen. We're just going to have a structure. We kind of know what the journey's going to be. Let's just go on this journey. If we break down, have a car crash, fine, don't worry, we'll get the AA and fix it. Or actually, it's quite a nice, smooth journey. And yeah, I think that's kind of the experiences that I'm getting when I'm engaging with people. And yeah, most of the time people jump into it. They really love it because, as you say, the goal is to just live on stage effectively and kind of recreate that real life experience of it being different every night.
And then out of nowhere on Christmas Eve of, I think it was it would have been 2019, on Christmas Eve they messaged me saying, these are your flights, these are the details, we'll see you in like less than 3 weeks. I was actually working in a spa at the time. I had to write my letter of resignation there and then on Christmas Eve and hand it to my boss, who said, if you don't go, I'm going. So she was very, very supportive. And off I went. And that was the beginning of 2020, which was very interesting. So I flew straight out there. I worked within the parks. We did lots and lots of training before I actually went onto the Disney Cruise Line ship itself. And it was just an absolutely amazing experience. I was assisting in both wigs and makeup. I say assisting, actually. I was the only person on the cruise ship that actually did my job, which they actually call in America cosmetology. So it was a little bit daunting knowing that I had somebody training me, but when they got off at the next port, that was it. I was on my own and there was nobody to sort of talk to or do anything. But yeah, it was absolutely brilliant. I had such a good time. Unfortunately, then we started to hear about this little word that was called COVID, and this was this was sort of end of March. Was it end of March? And people were sort of saying, "Oh yeah, about this COVID stuff," and I'm going, "Yeah, I've got stuff to do. Speak to you later," and getting on with my day. And then it's people were saying in the canteen area that one of the parks had closed. Now Disney don't close parks for nothing. Okay, and we were like, this is not looking good. And then all of our guests sort of got off the ship on the Saturday, which was normal, that was our port day, and we were expecting our new guests to get on, and nobody got on. And we've been told that actually, what we're going to do is we're going to have a week of just going cruising around, clean everything up. They actually sometimes call these like a ghost cruise. And sometimes these happen if it's during like hurricane season or something, and it's not particularly safe and people don't really want to be on a cruise ship during that time. So we just expected to go out to sea for a week and then we'd come back and we'd just pick everybody up the following Saturday. Yeah. And that didn't happen. And, that was the end of that really. The only thing I will say is there was lots of cruise ships that were really struggling during this time. There were times that I would speak to my family during this time, and I was in the safest place in the world. We were being looked after so well. We were being paid. Nobody was, everybody was being paid to be on the ship. Although there was disaster going on all over the world, we were at one point just anchored just outside of Port Canaveral. No COVID on our ship. Nobody was getting on, nobody was getting off, and we were in the safest place in the world. And I'd be communicating with family back home, and they'd be telling me that people are arguing over toilet roll in Tesco's. So I felt quite happy to be where I was, to be honest.
I still keep my hand in with various things. I still go into universities and do a bit of lecturing and go into schools and do bits and bobs. And so I'm quite fortunate in that, I've managed to sort of, in everything that I've ever done, I've managed to sort of keep some grasp or some roots within that profession, which is quite nice. But it all, as I say, I think a lot of us go through like a period of not crisis, but we have doubts in our sort of mid-20s, early 30s about the careers that we're in. And I think we're so work-centric and job-focused. People often define themselves by their work.
Yeah.
And, they look at their friends and their peers, and everyone seems to be doing their thing and they're getting on with their life. And you can very quickly feel like you're being left behind, and, you're missing out on life because, everyone paints the picture that they really love their job. And the reality is mostly somewhat different. Most people find themselves getting in a job that they don't really know what they're doing. Then they start earning money, and they're in a job which they can't quit because they're earning so much money and they're used to a lifestyle. And I sort of made a decision pretty much in my mid-20s that I wasn't going to define myself by my work, that I was sort of going to define myself by my life. And, my dad passed away a couple of months ago, and he was an electrician. And he was, one of the most intelligent men I ever knew. Could make anything, build anything, built the house we live in, and just so creative with his hands. If I bought a cupboard from IKEA, I'd be rocking in the corner in 6 hours crying my eyes out because I wouldn't have a clue what to do. But if you give me a book on further mathematics or organic chemistry or quantum physics or the law or biochemistry, that kind of thing comes quite easy to me. And so I kind of realized early on that I was quite fortunate in that I could sort of chop and change careers relatively easy because, rightly or wrongly, my brain is valued in society as opposed to someone's sort of physical hands.
I think the most horrific moment for me on stage was I was doing a show called Godspell, which is really, really old. And there's this one scene where we're acting out a parable, and I jump into the arms of my brother. Now, the guy that was playing my brother got arrested the night before and was in the cells. So the director had to stand in and play his part.
Right.
Well, I subsequently jumped off this scaffolding into his arms, and his arms weren't there. Fine. Luckily, it was on the extension. It was on the proscenium arch, so there was some give in it.
Oh,
I literally did the rest of the show hobbling around the stage. Oh, and I did stab myself in the calf once playing a pirate in Pirates of Penzance. Went about 1.5 inches into my leg with a sword.
Oh, for goodness sake.
For people not familiar with your work, you're not often alone on stage.
No.
And that's possibly a weird way of describing it because it is just one person stood up there, but you're often joined by... I don't know what the way to describe them is. Alter egos, is that probably...
Yeah, they're sort of like, it's... So I kind of had a phase in around 2013, 14, where what I was doing was full-on character comedy, in that I would say, now I'm going to be Mr. Gumbo, which was a sort of rubbish superhero. And now I'm going to be, you know, I had specific characters, and then I would put on the costume and do them. They were all rubbish. They were all absolute rubbish. Like, I do look in hindsight at those shows and go, that was just me kind of following my own ideas about, like, maybe it'd be funny if I did this, with no consideration of like, will this be good for the audience? I don't know. Like, one of them was just me running around drinking everyone's drinks while some bluegrass played, and I was in like a little pair of pants, and no craft to it at all, no sense of like, why is this funny and why do I want to do it? I was just like, that's what I'm going to do. So that was a sort of a phase, and then I did shows as myself for a bit. But then last year, I kind of now tried to get to a point, like you say, where it's more kind of an alter ego thing than I'm playing the character. Because the show I did in 2019 was called Jos Norris is Dead, Long Live Mr. Fruit Salad. And the idea was that I had been replaced in my life by this imaginary character called Mr. Fruit Salad, which was very obviously me in a beard and sunglasses and a hat, pretending to be someone else. And he had this very annoying voice. He sort of came on and went, "Hello, my name is Mr. Fruit Salad and welcome to my show." And it was, again, rubbish. It was a really bad character with no depth or no kind of like substance to it. But then I think I managed to get my head around that being the point for the first time, of like, everybody knew it was me clearly having a breakdown and hiding and pretending. But the character became this kind of like nonsense surrogate through which I could do all these stupid things. And then you can kind of make a show that's sort of about having a breakdown in disguise and stuff, but without having to talk about it. Because I think that's another tricky thing in stand-up, is when it gets very confessional and it's like, and then I had my difficult time and let me tell you all about it. I think I find those moments a bit draining in a stand-up show. But when you're a man in a hat and a beard going, I've been having a really bad year, then you got to go, oh, great, this is fun.
You know, there's a lot of areas that when you work on a cruise ship, it's sort of guest only areas. We were in the swimming pools, we were at the crew bar, we were at the posh bar that no one's allowed to go to. No crew members are allowed in there. We were up there every night, you know, and we were just making the most of the experience, because, you know, it was such an awful time for so many people. You know, but we had to take advantage of where we were. And there was we had the most amazing captain on our ship as well. And he kept us just outside of Port Canaveral, but within a cellular zone. So we were able to use our mobile phones. We were able to communicate with family. Wi-Fi usually costs money on the ship. That was all free of charge. They wanted people to be, you know, connected with the world at this particular time. And that was so, so good. And I think we had about 20 plus days where we'd been on the ship, and everyone was still having a great time, but they had to stop at certain ports to refuel. And also, although we weren't allowing anybody on and off the ship, cargo still had to be sort of taken around and whatnot to different islands. And Disney actually own an island in the Bahamas called Castaway Cay, which we used to go to on a Saturday with all of our guests. And our captain actually spoke to the Bahamian government and said, look, you know, we've got this crew on board. Is there any way? And during lockdown, when you guys were all in tours, we had a day in the Bahamas and it was amazing. It was so good.
Right, and that's the end of this episode, because I'm fed up of you having a good time through COVID.
Yeah, honestly, like, my friends list on social media was just deteriorating day by day. People were like, I don't care what she's doing. I don't want to know anymore.
I can't not mention what has got to be one of the most unique jobs. So people that are watching on YouTube as opposed to listening, you might be looking and thinking, now, we recognise Joel from somewhere. And no, it's not Magic Mike, as much as he looks like he should be doing Magic Mike. But anyone that's been tuning into ITV recently might have seen you in a slightly different guise. Talk to us about this, because I mean, unique is the word for this gig. I think is probably the way to describe it.
Yeah, I mean, Apocalypse Wow. Yeah. So as a part of this foundation that I run, okay, like I say, we do all of the crazy, outrageous events that go on in the UK, and people sort of say, well, what do you mean by that? And I'm like, well, okay, so I always, with a smile CV, reads something along the lines of this. I'm a 5-time winner of the Birdman, which is where you build a flying machine and fly off the pier. Yeah. I'm a former world clog cobbing champion. That's where you throw a pair of old boots over the back of your head. I hold the record for carrying the heaviest wife in wife carrying history at 22 stone. I also hold the record for carrying 2 wives at the same time. I hold the record for carrying the heaviest amount of coal at the World Coal Carrying Championships, which is 120 kilos. You do that for just under a mile. I'm the target at the World Egg Throwing Championships. I start and stop World Pillar Fight Day every year. I'm an ambassador for the Malden Mud Run, for the Liverpool Santa Dash, for all these different things. And I am also a 6-time World Gravy Wrestling Champion. And I am in the Guinness Book of World Records for that achievement. And I have done TV shows in Russia and Germany and in the UK. And so I got approached by the Apocalypse Whale producers because I'd worked with Chris from Chris and Kem a couple of years ago doing something similar. And they approached me for this TV show, which they described as a bit like Gladiators. And I was like, okay. And they were saying, you know, it was going to be basically to wrestle a team of celebrities. And I was like, yeah, fine, you know, do what we need to do and everything else. And that's how it sort of came about, really. And I got when TV shows approach me to do what we do, sometimes they don't realize the insanity of what's involved.
Honestly, Drew, mate, have you ever known a guy like Joel with just so many unique claims to fame?
It's true, Sam. It's true. I mean, you know what? Amongst all his other talents, I wonder if he's a writer, because he's going to need to write a book about all his escapades and adventures and stories one day.
Yeah, I think it'd be a bestseller as well. I mean, just talking about them with him has made me feel exhausted. I think I might need another drink to recuperate.
Do you know, that's a very good idea. I tell you what, we'll top up and we'll dive back in. You ready, Sam?
Oh, I am ready and raring to go.
Perfect. Let's see who's up next.
As soon as you say, I'm a comedian, there's always an expectation of like, oh, you're going to tell a joke. And I'm sure it's the same for you guys. Like, as soon as you say I'm an actor, you probably get the thing of like, oh, what have you been in that I might have seen or whatever. Like, There's always an expectation of like, well, if you're that, then you must fit my understanding of what that is rather than anything else. So it's sort of, I just find it easier to be like, I do stuff. It's mostly funny. You might not find it funny, but like some people do. And it's a way of getting out of those conversations, really.
For me, it's the thing about drag very often right down, apart from a tiny little corner of it, is that it's very open, it's very friendly, and people are laughing with everybody, as you said, along with themselves. You know, I mean, you can have a good-looking fella in a frock who looks amazing, or you can have, you know, a short, dumpy little guy who's dreadful. No, don't put your hand down. Put your hand down. Put your hand down, Paddy.
But, but that's very much me. And do you know what? Everybody knows by the end of the night exactly what I am. They know I am, you know, a great pretender. It's nothing less than that. But I think people get invested in it because it is that. And I don't think the whole thing itself, I think people sometimes, if they've never been to a show before, come with a bit of a misconception.
Yeah.
That it's a sexual thing or something like that, and it's not. It's just a good time.
It is an extension of the Dame thing. I mean, it's a fella in a frock, you know, and it's either a pretty fella in a frock, or as I said, it's a short fat guy who's in a frock who's a short fat woman. I mean, I always think that drag queens have a generosity of spirit and an openness. That the dress thing is it opens up to, you know, to a different personality, a different side of you. You can let something. I mean, I certainly know when I'm a dame in Panto, there's a side of me that comes out that I might keep it not a feminine side, but a fun side, a naughty side, a cheeky side. That, you know, a pair of false boobs and, you know, a ridiculous wig lets out a little bit.
Well, I agree with you. with that 100%, because, like I said, my wife says Foxy is Paddy in a frock, but Foxy is somebody who can get away with what she says. If I came out as a man to the audience and said what I say as Foxy, I would never get. Well, you know, I'd have lawsuits and people would be booing me, throwing glasses at me, and everything. But because I've got that little facade of actually being a drag queen, it liberates me to say a lot more things. And like I said, none of it's ever cruel, none of it's ever venomous. It's all very tongue-in-cheek and poking fun, and the facade, the makeup, and the pretense of Foxy is my conduit to get it out there.
When I was a bookworm, when you're absorbing information when you're a student, 2014, 2015, just, kind of wanting to know everything there is about theatre, I picked up a book called How to Start Your Own Theatre Company, which I was fair enough directed at the American markets, but I mean, you start a theatre company anyway, you start a theatre company anywhere. And the one thing that that just hit me and I've always stuck with is, if you want a strong, successful theatre company, you have got to have a strong, successful education and outreach department for a couple of reasons. Because, don't get me wrong, watching West End shows and being involved with them and having lovely commercial success and critical success is wonderful. And we put theatre on this pedestal of being accessible by the highest form of society. It just feels like this ethereal relief. But for me, you've got to, if you're ever starting something, you've got to create that community, and you've got to engage with the communities that you are in and around. So we're obviously based in Norfolk, and we make a point of being a predominantly active Norfolk theatre company that not just want to make shows and not just want to create engaging pieces of art, but also giving opportunities to those who may not have been able to access them, or even watch the shows. So even though, theatre and education may be very kind of, curriculum based, there's loads of companies that do that, and that's brilliant. How do you learn maths in a different way? How do you teach English or history in a different way? Perfect, love that, great, don't ever stop. For me, what I'm more interested in is telling stories that's more about the social stuff. I'll be honest, the stuff that kind of gets us as actors, the plays that we pick up and we go, oh, that's a really interesting comment on society, or oh, this, holding up a mirror. And we want to continue to do that through this particular show. We do have another one, not on the back burner, but it needs a little bit more work, it needs a little bit more development before we take that forward as well, on a different subject matter. My point being that if you are able to engage a community and you're able to live with them and create with them and just be with them, not only are you fulfilling your purpose as being a theatre for the masses, which is, theatre should be for everybody. I think everybody in the theatre holds that view, and we want people to come and engage with theatre. We're so desperate for it, especially since the unwelcome guest has made all of our guests unwelcome, because no one wants to go in at the moment. It's a really hard sell. And that's one of the other reasons why, because we were born in the fire. We incorporated last year, literally March 2020. What a time to do it. So there was no point us chasing, getting into theatres, making shows. We thought, well, let's cut our teeth somewhere where we know it's going to be needed, where the education sector, don't get me wrong, every sector's struggling. The education sector is, I'm working as a teacher at the moment in a school in Wyndham, and it's brilliant, it's lovely, I love it. It's a really difficult slog. I'm very lucky in the role that I've got. I'm seeing teachers around me who are putting in a shift and a half, and it's just it is just insane, the amount of workload, the amount of stress, not to mention the kids who've got to feel like they've got to catch up, they've got to do this, they've got to do this. We want to offer theatre that relieves people, that obviously offers that escapism, offers that education, offers that outreach, offers those skills to be able to do something, whatever they want to do with their lives. And yeah, don't get me wrong, we have got ambitions to become a theatre company where we go on tour, we do national theatre, we want critical success, but we really need to just kind of take a step back and go, okay, what's actually theatre for? It's for a multiple smorgasbord of reasons, and we're very much focusing on here right now, where can we most make a difference? It's going to be within these places.
You've got to be able to understand the plot from right at the back of the theatre. And at the end of the day, it is, although there's those different angles going on and there's a bit of a love story that develops as well, as there would be being a musical, it's still quite a simple plot that you can pretty much say in one sentence, which I'm not going to do now because you've got to come and watch it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Amazing. And actually,
I think the other point, the other important thing is that we sort of focused on the sort of tragic elements of this, but because the characters are fictional, we can have a lot of fun with them. So, you know, the scenes that involve the factory ladies or girls, that is absolutely a moment of comedy and real contrast to some of the other more tragic elements. And then we have a lot of fun with the government element, who are sort of, it's in the government element, the way we portray that is entirely fictional, as far as we know. But we have these characters in bowler hats singing in sort of 4-part harmony. I'm not aware the government normally goes around doing things like that.
I don't think we want to see.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Being that your style of comedy is perhaps different to quite a lot of the mainstream, do you find that you avoid controversy? I mean, obviously we're living in a world now where people get offended by a lot of things, rightly or wrongly, and there are certain subjects that are very much frowned upon or that people will try and avoid, and there's this big cancel culture. I think even just this week there was an article about Catherine Ryan saying something on.
Oh yeah, they found an old joke about animal testing.
And I think it's very difficult now because you have got a lot of shock comedians still in existence, the likes of sort of Jimmy Carr and Frankie Boyle, who will deliberately say things to promote response and to deliberately be offensive because that is their style. Do you find that when you're writing, when you're creating, albeit that your style is potentially different, do you find you have to be careful, or do you feel that you're still kind of just going for it and your audiences will accept it because that is what you're like? I mean,
I find that basically I very rarely write about anything kind of social or cultural or political, partly because it's not a kind of comedy I find funny, really. Like generally whenever I read the news about stuff, I just feel depressed. Like there's nothing about it that makes me go, I want to make some comedy about this stuff. Like so I don't really go there. And I think also because there's the knowledge of, like, as soon as you start to do that, you're drawing a line down your audience somewhere. Like there's something nice about the idea that if you're going to be doing stuff that's stupid and just imaginative nonsense kind of thing, then you, even though it might be like a particularly kind of weird brand of stupid that some of your audience goes, this is weird, I don't like it.
Yeah. You're
not kind of drawing a battle line of like, if you don't agree with me about this thing, then you're outside of it. I think that's a line that I don't like drawing in my audiences. So I tend to just not go anywhere near it. I also just think I find the whole debate about the kind of cancel culture and the freedom of speech thing tricky, because there's an amazing comedian called Michael Brunstrom who does absurdist, stupid nonsense. I do a lot of shows with him. He's really great. And it was when the Nazi pug guy happened. Do you remember the Nazi pug guy who he did some jokes about gas chambers and he taught his pug dog to do a Nazi salute, and he was taken off YouTube.
Yeah.
And then the kind of freedom of speech lot were like, we're being attacked. We're having our freedom of speech attacked. We have the right to offend. You're allowed to say whatever you want. And Michael Brunstrom tweeted something that I think about a lot with this debate, where he said, nobody is attacking your freedom of speech to say nice things. And I kind of think about that a lot, where like the people who say, I'm under attack, I'm having my freedom of speech taken away, seem to always be trying to say stuff that's quite hateful. And if you just choose to go, I'm going to do playful, silly, jolly nonsense, nobody comes at you and goes, hey, you can't do that. Everybody just goes, this is great, this is fun. So it feels like you seem to be making an active choice to kind of, but then at the same time, I think their argument is very important. I think like art does have a responsibility and a right to talk about whatever it wants. And I think we mustn't get to a point where you take that away and you deny that from people. But it's become this funny weaponized thing where the people using that argument, by and large, this is a big generalization, but by and large, they seem to be people trying to say kind of hateful, divisive, unpleasant things. And again, then you get bogged down in politics. Maybe I only think that because I disagree with their politics. And maybe actually, if I was on their side, I'd go, no, we need to defend these people's rights. So I think because it's such a muddy issue, I just try not to go there. I try to do stuff that I think is like joyful, stupid nonsense. And then it should mean I never upset anyone for thinking something. Unless you've gone, I can upset them for just going, hey, you've stolen my drink and then poured it on my head. Can you not? And that's a much easier line to draw of, okay, that was out of order, rather than, you know.
Yeah.
I'm an idiot rather than
rather than you're an idiot for not thinking the same as me.
This is almost an exclusive because there's only a few people that know about this, because I don't really want too many people to know.
We love an exclusive on Drewling Samantics, so please hit us. Go for it.
Go.
And I can assure you, this was the first show that I was ever doing on my own plot on Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. And there is a particular part of the show where there is a scene where certain actors run towards me, and I basically, my only job at this, and there was a lot of quick changes, there was a lots of more in-depth things that I had to do within the show, but this is just the quickest change ever. And all I had to do was plop a wig onto, not even anybody with hair, he didn't even have hair, this particular actor, just put a wig on his head for the OAP scene that is within Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. And then they run back on stage, and then they're all like old people in it, they're all going crazy within the show. Okay, so that's all I had to do, was just put a wig on this gentleman's head and let him run back out. I put it on upside down. Wig was upside down. Now I was fortunate because it was kind of like an afro type wig, so the hair was kind of like all over the place. It wasn't like there wasn't a particular like parting, or there wasn't any lace or anything like that. But the thing is, this is how quick the quick change was. He would run out and turn around, and I would put the wig straight over his head, and then he would run back onto stage again. It was seconds, literally seconds.
Yeah.
So I had to think, right, okay, so he's going to run towards me, he's going to turn around. But I had the wig in my hand as if he hadn't turned round. So the label was at the bottom, but that ended up here. And he ran out on stage with the wig upside down on his head. I was obviously mortified. It was my first time on my own with my own plot on one of the biggest shows in the West End. And at that particular point, I allowed him to go out with his wig upside down. And because he was such a gentleman, and because he's just a lovely guy, he literally just said to me, oh, just so you know, I didn't realise, but that the wig, he said it was upside down. He said, don't make it easy. He goes, oh, no one would have noticed. He said, I didn't even notice till I took it off. And I thought, what a nice guy. But inside, I was so embarrassed.
Oh, bless you.
And then obviously everybody knows you've just started this new gig, and they're like, oh, how's it going? And especially on your first day, I've got a lot of supportive friends and family, and they message me and say, like, how was your first day? And a majority of them, I was like, oh yeah, it was great, blah, blah, blah. But you just can't lie to your mum. So straight away, she said to me, how was your first day? I was like, Mum, I put a wig upside down on the guy's head. He ran out, the biggest show in the West End at that particular point. I said, we'll wig upside down on his head. And she was like, that's okay, darling. You'll be fine next time. Like all the support. But I was just mortified, absolutely mortified.
But I think, at the heart of it always for me is this really happened to real people, and And it never ceases to amaze me, as we touched on earlier. If some German war aircraft came over this country right now and dropped some bombs on us, I just don't believe that we would cope in the way that the people back then did. You know, we'd be moaning that we don't have Wi-Fi and we can't watch Netflix, and you know, what are we meant to do? And you know, they just got on with it, and their good humour and their respect for each other, you know, I think it speaks volumes of the people of that time. And I think, and as Anthony has said, you know, we really hope that we honour those people through what we're doing here with The Truth Stops Here, and they are at the heart of it all the time.
I did do a play in 2018, actually, but before that, the last time I'd done an actual kind of acting job that wasn't comedy related was one of the just bizarrest sort of sequences of things that have happened. It was a touring outdoor modern musical production of Love's Labour's Lost, where they took Love's Labour's Lost, which is already about 2.5 hours long, didn't cut any of it, but added over an hour of pop songs. And then toured it all around the country and performed it in the grounds of castles around the place.
Right.
And the production lost £32,000 overall. That was the net loss on the thing. Just a disaster. And we kind of took it around, and the sort of peak of it was we did a week in Cornwall. We sort of went around these different castles in Cornwall, and just a sort of litany of disasters, the whole thing, where they found out they couldn't afford proper accommodation. The only accommodation they could afford was a yurt on Land's End. There's a yurt there that you can book. So we had to drive to Land's End, but the venues we were performing it in were at the other end of Cornwall, and Cornwall's massive. Cornwall's really, really big. So we had to drive for about 3 hours every day to get to the venue, and then the show would finish at close to midnight because it was so long, and then we'd get in the van and drive 3 hours back to Land's End and sit in the yurt. And we were always performing to about 5 people. Like, we were putting on this massive thing. I had to sing weird song choices as well. I had to do She's So Lovely by Scouting for Girls, but at one point I Grieve by Peter Gabriel was in there, and also Love Really Hurts Without You by Billy Ocean. So just like a mishmash of stuff where, like, there's no coherence to this all. Mayday by Uncle, that was the big opening thing.
So when you say pop, not even like a certain,
not even like classic pop, like a mixture of some stuff from the 60s where people will go, oh yeah, I love this, but like a lot of just the director's own musical taste, where he went, well, I quite like this kind of obscure 2010s electronica artist, so we'll put that in. And it sort of peaked with the morning. There was an actor who was playing, I forget the character's name, but the kind of the Don something. He's like the Spanish lord or something.
Yeah, Don.
He sort of went mad, and one morning he played saxophone, and he was trying to practice his saxophone, and then he noticed that every time he played saxophone, the cows in the next field started having sex, because I think they mistook it for some sort of, like, I don't know, maybe there's like a certain kind of mating moo that they do. And somehow the way he played it sounded exactly like it. So the last kind of 3 days of this thing, we were all getting so depressed and so tired, and we knew we weren't getting paid because it was losing so much money. And we would just watch him playing saxophone to a field of cows, and then watch all the cows starting to get off with each other. And we'd be like, this I guess is just how it's going to be. This is what it's going to turn out as. And just all of us gradually losing our minds. And then afterwards, they did a Brechtian version of The Crucible to try and make the money back, which I think lost £10,000. That was their kind of like, this one's going to be the big hit. So all of you that didn't get paid for Love's Labour's Lost will get paid for this. Just another disaster. But I made a lot of friends. I wouldn't have moved to London if I hadn't met the people I met on that show. So even the things that go horribly wrong tend to give you a way forward.
The conversations that I was having was brilliant, because obviously you have a workshop conversation, you have the kids around you, they get to ask questions, but you throw facts at them, not just about boy bits but about girl bits as well, how they work, because it's quite nice to know both sides. You can be sympathetic and both sides, blah blah blah, whatever. And obviously when it gets to about penis length, obviously there are some boys who are, let's say, a bit too enthusiastic. One of whom said, what's the average size? What's the size? How big does it get? How big does it get? I went, well, usually the average size of a penis is between 2 or 4 inches. And he went, miss, get a ruler! Get a ruler!
Oh, God.
This was also the boy who said, if I grow hair, do I grow a tail?
What?
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Bless him, he was 10 years old. I love it. Bless him, bless him. He's probably now, 17, 18? So if he has grown that tail, if you are watching, please do get in touch.
Just before the first lockdown, I was out in Ireland filming what's called The Northman, which will be coming out early next year. It's a film by Robert Eggers. It's a Viking saga starring Alex Skarsgård. And we got to the last day of filming. And in this particular scene, we've been raping and pillaging and everything like that. I play a berserker in it, like a Viking warrior. And we had to do a scene where we're enjoying the fruits of our spoils, in effect. And if you imagine a long sort of Viking room, and we're all sitting there drinking, and the camera comes through the fire, and we're all gathered around. And Robert said to me, he says, okay, he was giving people different sort of jobs to do. And one guy had to eat an onion. So he's there and he's got an apple and an onion skin wrapped around it so it looks like he's eating it. He says, oh, Joel, you can have the eggs. Okay. And he says, yeah, so what you've got to do is you've got to crack an egg and then eat the raw egg. I was like, okay, fine. We did 13 takes of this. It was like Cool Hand Luke, except with raw egg. And they were all just absolutely wetting themselves. I had yolk all down the beard, bits of shell. Mate. I mean, I can't wait to see if they cut it out, I will be absolutely gutted from the film. Because I'm sitting there, every time, I'm just like, here we go again. Oh,
madness! Absolute mad. I mean, genius. What a summary of what you do. You go from serious modelling, barrister work, being a teacher, being in the forces, and then you're eating raw eggs on TV.
Eating raw eggs, and there was a couple that were on the turn.
God! That is the perfect way to finish this.
That mate. I was flying home the next day, and you don't even want to know what was happening there.
Right, we're getting rid of you before you say too much.
So I think you might have called a halt to that story just in time, as memory serves.
Well, yeah, no, you're not wrong there, mate. I mean, amazing hearing some stuff from Joel, but that one in particular, I think I could see where it was going, and I'm not sure whether I would have been able to listen to any more on that subject.
That's very true. Mind you, I have to say, I mean, looking back over that just proves I really could listen to our guests for far, far longer. They have just been brilliant. Some great stories and great stuff there to hear again.
Amazing. We truly are so very lucky to have had such amazing people to chat to all throughout the season. Just amazing stuff. But sadly, Drew, all good things do come to an end.
They do. And as we're kind of winding to the end now of this episode, before we go any further, let's just remember and say a big thanks to Callan, to Paddy, Joel, Anthony, Emma, Joz, and Becky. They were all amazing. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. They've been fabulous.
Massive thank you to each and every one of our lovely guests for joining us. And also a massive thank you to everyone at home listening or watching on YouTube, or whether you happen to be in the world working or sat, whatever you're doing. We wouldn't be here without amazing listeners, viewers, subscribers. So massive thank you, and hope you enjoyed going back over some of the highlights from our guest episodes as much as we did.
Absolutely. And anybody that's new to Drewling Samantics that may have dropped in on this episode or a couple of episodes before this and are new to us, this is a real little taster of some of the wonderful guests we've had. And a taster of some of the wonderful guests we have to come in future seasons. So a big thank you to you for joining us. If you're new, go back and have a listen to some of the archive episodes, but stick with us because we do have a load more fun guests and a load more fun from us to come. Do we not, Sam?
Yeah, exactly. So I was going to say we not only is this a highlights episode of all the shows where we had guests join us, but next week we do have the best of us, which is, again, ideal for anyone who's new to Drewling Samantics and might want to find out what normal rubbish we chat about or what we kind of get up to. But also it's great for anyone that's been with us for a while just to go back over and see some of the mental things that we consider to be our favourite moments from the past season.
Yeah, please join us for the best bits of us. We've got no guests to hold us back. We're just full range, just Sam Dunning and Drew Fetters left to wander through the deserts of their minds and the exciting bits of the industry.
Yeah, literally no one to keep us in check, no one to control us. What could possibly go wrong there? Eh? But no, I am really, really excited for next week. Really looking forward to it. And of course, joining you for the last time in season 3, Drew. So,
oh gosh, yes.
A big cheers to you, mate.
And to you, Sam.
And of course, a big cheers to everyone tuning in, joining us from wherever you happen to be. Thank you so much for sticking with us. We'll hopefully see you next week. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks everyone. See you next week. Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in. We hope you've enjoyed this special highlights episode of Drewling Samantics.
If you have, then make sure you go and watch all our previous episodes in full for even more fun and interesting content. Please consider subscribing to our channel too, and you'll get notified every time a new video is released.
Don't forget we're also available as audio only. Just search Drewling Samantics in any good podcast app. And we'd love your support on social media as well. We're on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, and all our links and handles are on screen now.
We love welcoming new followers and subscribers, so please share with your family and friends, and we'll be eternally grateful. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.